Today we're embarking on a truly fascinating journey, not to some far-off land, but actually deep into the hidden landscape of our own minds. We're going to pull back the curtain a bit on the mysterious world of dreams. And our guide, well, it's one of the most influential thinkers of all time, Sigmund Freud, and his groundbreaking work, The Interpretation of Dreams.
It really is a groundbreaking work, a book that just absolutely shattered centuries of conventional thought about dreams.
Right.
Freud presented dreams not as, just random physiological noise or quaint superstitions, but as incredibly meaningful expressions of our deepest, often hidden selves.
Which must have been shocking at the time.
Oh, completely. When he first published it back in 1899, his ideas were met with, widespread bewilderment, even by his professional colleagues. They tended to just dismiss dreams as a mere side effect of being conscious.
And that's exactly where we come in. We've taken Freud's extensive work, his prefaces, his really detailed analyses, even his later editions over decades, and we're trying to distill the most compelling insights for you. Our mission today is to give you a kind of shortcut, really, to understanding the core ideas that basically reshaped how we think about human psychology. And hopefully with enough vivid examples and surprising connections to keep you, hooked and curious.
And this isn't just about abstract Freudian theory. It's about exploring the very real terrain of the unconscious mind, that powerful drive of wish fulfillment, and the strange symbolic language our minds speak to us each night.
Exactly.
We'll be connecting these revolutionary ideas to experiences we all share, I think. From those forgotten childhood memories that suddenly bubble up to those really persistent recurring dreams that just won't let go of us,
So settle in. We want to take you into an intimate, high-level exchange, almost like two thinkers sitting in a quiet library late at night, pulling back the curtain on the human mind together. You're smart, you're curious, and by the end of this deep dive, you'll hopefully have a whole new way of looking at what happens when you close your eyes. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
So Freud didn't just write a book about dreams. He declared them a key, a fundamental key, to understanding abnormal mental phenomena, what he called psychical phenomena. That sounds like he wasn't just interested in dreams as a curiosity, right? But as a stepping stone to something much bigger. What did he really mean by that?
That's a very perceptive observation. Freud explicitly positioned dream interpretation as fundamental, maybe even paradigmatic. A step for comprehending much more severe conditions like hysterical phobias, obsessions, delusions, that sort of thing.
Wow.
He asserted that if you couldn't explain the origin and meaning of dream images, then understanding and, crucially, treating these more complex neuroses would be nearly impossible. He saw dreams as the first member of a class of abnormal psychical phenomena, a kind of foundational, readily accessible example. So it wasn't about the immediate practical importance of dreams themselves, maybe, but rather their immense theoretical value.
I see.
He viewed them as a uniquely accessible pathway into the underlying mechanisms that govern all mental processes. It basically set the stage for an entirely new approach to neuropsychology and psychopathology.
So it was less about, say, treating specific dream issues and more about dreams providing a sort of Rosetta Stone for the mind's deeper, more complex workings, especially regarding mental health conditions, almost like unlocking a hidden code.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He was hunting for foundational principles, the underlying mechanisms that govern our mental life. And dreams, being the most readily observable abnormal psychical phenomena, offered a clear, accessible window.
Right.
This was a bold claim, obviously, one that shifted dreams from being just a curious byproduct of sleep to a central pillar of psychological inquiry. A blueprint, really, for understanding both the normal and the pathological mind.
You mentioned earlier that his ideas were initially met with, bewilderment, especially by his peers. Why was this book very far from being an easy one to read for them? What was that intellectual resistance like? He must have felt like he was swimming against a really strong current.
Oh, he absolutely was. Freud himself noted that his psychiatric colleagues seemed to have taken no trouble to overcome the initial bewilderment. Can you imagine?
Wow, just dismissed it.
Pretty much. He observed that professional philosophers, for centuries, were kind of accustomed to polishing off the problems of dream life in just a few sentences, typically treating it as a mere appendix to conscious states.
An afterthought.
Exactly. They simply failed to notice that we have something here from which a number of inferences can be drawn that are bound to transform our psychological understanding. This new approach was deeply, deeply challenging to the established scientific and philosophical views of the late 19th century. They often just dismissed dreams as meaningless physiological noise or purely physical reactions.
Right.
It was a radical departure from the norm, and intellectual inertia, as we know, is a powerful force to overcome.
It really sounds like he felt quite isolated in that early reception. Like he was presenting a concept so alien to the prevailing thought that it was almost incomprehensible to them.
He did, and he felt it keenly, you can tell from his writing. But that didn't deter him in the slightest. He just kept refining his theory, incorporating new insights as his understanding of the mind deepened over decades. For instance, his really comprehensive theory of sexuality was not yet in existence when he wrote the first edition in 1899.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Later editions, spanning from 1909 all the way to 1930, saw numerous interpolations and additional footnotes to account for the advance of scientific knowledge, particularly regarding the extent and importance of symbolism in dreams, or rather, in unconscious thinking.
So the book itself evolved over time.
Massively. He even included and later removed essays by his colleague Otto Rank, which is quite telling, actually. It showcases the book's evolving nature and Freud's willingness to integrate or sometimes discard ideas as the field progressed. It truly was a living, breathing body of thought, constantly being refined.
So before Freud came along with this revolutionary approach, what were the prevailing ideas about dreams? You mentioned the sources say there was a long history of scientific understanding, but with very little advance. What did people typically believe was happening when they dreamt?
Yeah, it's quite something. For many thousands of years, the scientific understanding of dreams remained largely stagnant, really caught between superstition on one hand and overly simplistic physiological explanations on the other.
Right.
Prior to Aristotle, dreams were generally regarded as something introduced by a divine agency. Divine communications, warnings, prophecies.
Like messages from the gods?
Exactly. Think of ancient civilizations looking to dreams for guidance or for omens about the future. That was a very common view.
But the sources also mention vain, deceitful, and worthless dreams, whose purpose it was to mislead. So even then, there was a sense of needing to interpret, right? Of sifting the wheat from the chaff, not just blind acceptance.
Precisely. These two opposing currents, dreams as divine insight versus dreams as misleading illusions, have influenced opinions throughout history. There was always this need to discern true prophecy from, deceptive visions. Aristotle, though, he shifted the perspective significantly. He viewed dreams not as divine but as demonic, which sounds spooky, but he meant arising from nature and following the laws of the human spirit.
So internal, not external.
Exactly. He defined them as psychological studies, albeit still kind of akin to the divine in their mysterious origin. But this was a crucial pivot, moving the sorts of dreams from external supernatural forces to something internal to the human mind itself. Even if that inner realm was still largely mysterious and not fully understood, he saw them as phenomena arising from within, not messages imposed from without.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now, one of the most intriguing claims in Freud's work, and what must have felt truly radical at the time, is this idea that dreams have access to memories which are inaccessible in waking life. This sounds like the very precursor to his monumental idea of the unconscious mind. Can you give us some examples of these hypermnesic dreams? They sound fascinating.
They really are. This concept of hypermnesic dreams is of immense theoretical importance because it provides direct, almost undeniable evidence for the existence of a memory reservoir way beyond our conscious recall.
Right.
Freud provides several vivid examples. Maury, for instance, a researcher Freud often cited, recounts how for some time the word Musadan kept popping into his head during the day. He knew nothing about it except that it was the name of a town in France.
Okay, just a random word.
Seemingly random. Yet one night he dreamt he was talking to someone from Musadan, who, upon being asked where it was, described its exact location in detail.
So the dream literally filled in a knowledge gap that his conscious mind couldn't access. It pulled information from somewhere hidden. That's truly remarkable.
Precisely. The information was there, stored somewhere, just not available to his waking consciousness. Another striking example from Maury involves a childhood memory. When he was a child, he used to go from his birthplace, Meaux, to Trillport, where his father was building a bridge. Years later, he dreamt he was back in Trillport, playing in the street.
Okay.
A man in uniform, a watchman at the bridge named C, came up to him. Maury woke up feeling skeptical, naturally. But upon revisiting Trillport years later, he found the bridge exactly as in the dream, and actually confirmed the watchman's name and uniform with locals.
No way.
Yes. This was a memory from very early childhood, likely long suppressed or forgotten in his conscious life. that resurfaced with astonishing accuracy in a dream.
And Freud even provides a personal example, right? Linking a one-eyed doctor from his earliest childhood to a one-eyed schoolmaster in a dream 38 years later. That's an incredibly specific detail surfacing from deep memory. It highlights how persistent these hidden memories can be.
Absolutely.
Right.
He dreamt of someone he knew in the dream as his native town's doctor. The face was indistinct, but it was confused with a one-eyed schoolmaster he occasionally met. Upon waking, he couldn't connect them at all. However, when he asked his mother about the doctor from his earliest childhood, he learned the doctor had indeed only one eye. And the schoolmaster, too, was one-eyed. This incredibly specific detail, the shared monocularity, surfaced in a dream after 38 years of being consciously forgotten.
Wow.
These cases collectively demonstrate that dreams are not just random noise. They draw on a vast, often hidden reservoir of memory, hinting at a psychical reality far richer and more complex than our waking awareness typically allows. It was this compelling evidence that led Freud to propose the revolutionary concept of an unconscious mind.
So, if dreams are drawing from this hidden archive, Freud's main mission, as he puts it, is to show that dreams are capable of being interpreted. This is a monumental claim, especially after centuries of dismissing them. How did he propose to do this? How did he diverge from those earlier methods you mentioned?
Well, he identified those two traditional methods, both of which he found, frankly, severely limited for truly unlocking a dream's meaning. The first is that symbolic interpretation.
Right, like Joseph and Pharaoh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Takes the dream as a whole and replaces it with an analogous, often allegorical meaning. Joseph interpreting the 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows as years of abundance and famine. Classic example.
Yeah.
But this method, as Freud pointed out, inevitably breaks down when faced by dreams which are not merely unintelligible, but also confused. Which, let's be honest, is most dreams.
Yeah, they're usually pretty jumbled.
It's just too simplistic for the fragmented nature of typical human dreams.
Okay, and the second method?
The second is what he calls decoding, or cipher interpretation. You often find this in ancient Oriental dream books.
Like a dream dictionary.
Kind of, yeah. They rely on fixed, often arbitrary meanings for specific elements, sometimes based on similarity of sounds and resemblance between words. An example cited is the ancient interpretation of Alexander the Great dreaming of a satyr, Satyrus, dancing on his shield,
Okay.
which was interpreted as Tyros, falling to him. Clever, maybe, but this method also has severe limitations because it doesn't account for the individual's unique mental landscape. And meanings can get lost or distorted across cultures and languages. It's unreliable for universal application. It's like having a dictionary that changes definitions depending on who is reading it.
So if those traditional methods were inadequate, what was Freud's unique contribution? What was his method that allowed for a truly deep personal interpretation, something that could unlock that hidden archive you mentioned?
His psychoanalytic method for interpretation is radically different. Revolutionary, really. It requires the patient or the dreamer to increase in the attention he pays to his own psychical perceptions and the elimination of the criticism by which he normally sifts the thoughts that occur to him.
So letting go of judgment.
Exactly. This means lying in a restful attitude, often with eyes shut, and reporting whatever comes to mind, no matter how trivial, irrelevant, or meaningless it seems. This process, free association, is crucial.
Why?
Because our critical faculty, the part of us that's active in waking life, is precisely what prevents us from understanding our dreams. In sleep, this deliberate and no doubt also critical activity relaxes, allowing these involuntary ideas to emerge and transform into images. The analyst's role isn't to impose meaning, but to guide the patient in uncovering their own unique associations, tracing the threads back to the origin.
This brings us to Freud's really famous example, doesn't it? The dream of Irma's injection. He spent a lot of time analyzing this intensely personal dream to prove his theory, even if it meant, as he admitted, a variety of indiscretions. This is where it gets really interesting, I think, because it reveals so much about his process. What was the context of this dream? Why was it so important to him that he would lay bare such personal details?
This dream was incredibly important to Freud. It was one of his own, first of all, and it became the foundation upon which he developed and articulated his entire theory of dream interpretation as wish fulfillment.
Right, the cornerstone.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dream arose from a highly personal and professional dilemma. Freud had been treating a patient, Irma, for hysteria, but the treatment had only been a partial success. She was relieved of anxiety, but still had some somatic symptoms. During a summer break, a colleague, Otto, visited and casually remarked that Irma was not quite well. This really annoyed Freud. He fancied he detected a reproof, in Otto's words, as if Otto was implying he had promised the patient too much or that his treatment hadn't been fully effective.
Ouch. That must have stung.
It did. Feeling this desperate need to justify myself, to literally prove his method and his success, Freud began writing Irma's case history for another leading colleague, Dr. M. And the dream occurred that very night, clearly fueled by this intense personal desire for professional vindication and absolution. He put his own ego on the couch in a way.
So it was a dream driven by a very real, very human need for self-justification, a desire to prove his method worked and that he hadn't failed. What actually happened in the dream itself? The manifest content before he started unraveling it.
The manifest content is vivid and, at first glance, quite perplexing. Irma is pale and puffy. She complains of throat and abdominal pains, a sensation of constriction. Freud examines her throat and sees these remarkable curly structures.
Curly structures, okay.
Yeah. Dr. M's called in, confirms the finding, but looks different. He's pale, limping, clean-shaven. Otto and Leopold, two other colleagues, are also there. Leopold finds a dull area low down on the left. Dr. M just dismisses these findings, saying, dysentery, not important, will soon be eliminated.
Dysentery for throat pain.
Right. Then the dream shifts to a discussion of chemicals, specifically a propyl preparation and trimethylamine. This leads to a concern about injections of that sort not being made so thoughtlessly and the syringe not being clean. There's even an allusion to an unfortunate Mathilde, a woman who had suffered a tragic outcome due to a medical injection.
That's a lot of disjointed details. It's almost like a chaotic scene. How did Freud even begin to unpack all that? How did he find the hidden coherence and meaning within such a seemingly absurd narrative?
Well, the process involved extensive free association. For instance, Irma's symptoms in the dream, the throat, the abdomen, those were not her main complaints in reality. She mostly complained of nausea. So that immediately suggested a substitution was at play. Through association, Freud realized he was actually wishing that there had been a wrong diagnosis for Irma. Because if so, the blame for my lack of success would also have been got rid of.
So he was trying to shift the blame subconsciously.
His dream was, in essence, trying to absolve him of responsibility by creating a scenario where he wasn't at fault. It's a powerful demonstration of the self-justifying nature of some dream wishes.
Okay, so he was literally wishing the problem wasn't his, and the dream facilitated that. What about the appearance of his colleagues, Otto and Leopold? They both appear, but they seem to have different roles.
Yes, both Otto and Leopold were physicians, his assistants at a children's hospital, and also rivals. In the dream, he subtly contrasted Otto's quickness, which he implicitly found a bit thoughtless, with Leopold's slow but sure prudence, implicitly favoring Leopold. This paralleled his earlier comparison between his disobedient patient Irma and a friend of hers whom he regarded as wiser. The dream was constructing a scenario that was professionally favorable for Freud, basically.
And the really strange chemical discussion, propyl, trimethylamine injections, this part feels very specific and technical. How did that connect to his underlying thoughts? What was going on there?
This is a deep dive into his own memory associations. The fusel oil smell from some bad brandy Freud had encountered earlier that evening led him down a chain of chemical associations: propyl, methyl, amyl.
Okay.
The crucial element, though, was trimethylamine. Freud linked this to the immensely powerful factor of sexuality. This chemical also connected him to a friend whose agreement I recalled with satisfaction whenever I felt isolated in my opinions. And this friend had special knowledge of connections between the turbinal bones and the female organs of sex, which, in the dream logic, explained the curly structures in Irma's throat. It introduced a physical rather than purely hysterical explanation for her symptoms.
So again, shifting the blame away from his treatment potentially failing.
Exactly. In this complex way, the dream was, again, trying to absolve Freud of blame by suggesting a different physical cause for Irma's symptoms. Maybe an organic issue he couldn't have treated with psychotherapy anyway.
So what does this all mean? All these complex layers of association, substitution, hidden meanings, shifting blame, all from a single dream. It's an incredibly intricate, almost self-serving tapestry woven by the mind.
The dream, Freud concluded, was ultimately a plea, a sophisticated form of self-defense, like that analogy of the man accused of returning a damaged kettle who offers 3 mutually exclusive defenses. He returned it undamaged, it already had a hole when he borrowed it, and he never borrowed it in the first place.
Right, covering all bases, even if contradictory.
Precisely. Freud's dream constructed a scenario that allowed him to be acquitted of blame for Irma's incomplete recovery. It fulfilled his wish to be innocent, to be in the right, and to be seen as a competent doctor. This deep, meticulous analysis established the foundational concept that the dream's core purpose is always a wish fulfillment, even if that wish is deeply buried and extensively disguised by the dream work. It's a testament, really, to how our unconscious minds tirelessly work to manage our anxieties and fulfill our desires, even when we sleep.
Wow, that Irma dream analysis truly unravels the incredible complexity behind just one dream. Freud really put his own mind under the microscope there to show us how dreams are fundamentally a form of self-defense, fulfilling a wish. But was this just unique to his dream, or did he believe this wish fulfillment was a universal key to understanding all dreams, no matter how simple or terrifying? Are there, as he asked, perhaps no dreams but wishful ones?
Freud asserts that it is indeed a universal characteristic. He offers what he calls experimental proof, though maybe observational is a better word. He notes that if he eats salty food in the evening, he often gets thirsty during the night, which normally wakes him up. But before waking, he has a dream, always with the same content. He is drinking. He dreams he's swallowing water, maybe some cool, refreshing drink, because he's parched. This simple dream is a clear, undisguised wish fulfillment that allows him to not wake up. It appeases the thirst in the dream, prolonging sleep. He recounts similar dreams of convenience from his youth, where he'd dream of being out of bed and at the washing stand, just to gain a little more sleep when he found it hard to wake up early for school.
That student who dreamt he was already in the hospital so he didn't have to get up, that's a perfect example of a dream working to protect sleep. It's almost ingenious.
Absolutely. His landlady called through the door, "Wake up, Herr Peppy, it's time to go to the hospital." And in response, he dreamt he was already lying in bed in a hospital room with a little cart above his bed. Under this pretext, he could rationalize staying in bed, gaining a little more sleep, by convincing himself he was already at his destination. Even Napoleon, a famously sound sleeper, apparently, when woken by a bomb explosion, dreamt he was crossing the Tagliamento under the Austrian bombardment, then cried out, "We are undermined."
So the dream integrated the loud noise.
Exactly. It skillfully integrated the external stimulus into a familiar, maybe even wished-for battle scenario, allowing him to continue sleeping.
So dreams are essentially guardians of sleep, not its disturbers. That's so counterintuitive to how we often think of dreams, waking us up or causing distress like nightmares. It feels like the opposite of a wish being fulfilled.
You've hit on a key point there. That's a central and, yes, counterintuitive insight of Freud's. The conscious wish to sleep actively supports the unconscious wish driving the dream. Dreams actively modify external sensory stimuli in such a way as to make them compatible with a continuance of sleep. They weave them into a dream narrative to rob it of reality. They transform disturbances, whether internal like thirst or external like a noise, into something that can be experienced within the dream, thereby protecting the sleeper from actually waking up.
But what about anxiety dreams? Nightmares? They seem to directly contradict this idea that all dreams are wish fulfillments. How do you explain terrifying nightmares within this theory if the dream's fundamental purpose is to grant a wish? That feels like a major hurdle.
It does, and it's the objection most people raise, right? This apparently conclusive objection is met by returning to that crucial distinction Freud made, the difference between the manifest and the latent content of dreams.
Okay, the surface story versus the hidden meaning.
Precisely. The wish fulfillment isn't found in the surface content, what we consciously remember, especially if it's terrifying, but in the underlying thoughts which are shown by the work of interpretation to lie behind dreams. The anxiety you feel isn't the wish itself, it's a reaction to the disguised wish.
So what we remember isn't the true meaning, it's a distorted version. The dream is distorted specifically to hide something uncomfortable from us.
Exactly. The dream is distorted. And this distortion isn't due to some simple incapacity during sleep, like our brains just aren't working properly. Instead, it's caused by what Freud termed censorship.
Censorship, like an internal editor.
Kind of, yeah. He posited two psychical forces, or you could think of them as currents or systems. One system constructs the wish, originating from the unconscious. The other system exercises a censorship upon this dream wish, and by the use of that censorship, forcibly brings about a distortion in the expression of the wish. The anxiety you experience in a nightmare is the signal that this internal censorship is being activated, usually because of the repugnant or unacceptability of the repressed content trying to emerge.
So the anxiety itself is a sign of something being repressed or resisted. It's almost a protective mechanism, even if it feels awful, like a smoke alarm telling you there's a fire, even if you don't know where it is yet.
That's a perfect analogy. The repugnance felt for the topic of the dream or for the wish derived from it and to an intention to repress them leads to this distortion and often the accompanying anxiety. Dreams, therefore, reveal the true nature of man, though not his whole nature, and they would constitute one means of rendering the hidden interior of the mind accessible to our knowledge. Freud even links anxiety in dreams directly to neurotic anxiety, rooted in sexual life, where libido, that fundamental life energy, often sexual in nature, has been transformed into anxiety.
Oh.
This suggests anxiety dreams often have a sexual content that is being heavily repressed or transformed, and the anxiety is the consequence of this powerful censorship, not the underlying wish itself.
Okay, so if our minds are working so hard to disguise these wishes, where do dreams even get their raw material from? Is it just stuff that happened yesterday, or does it go much deeper, reaching way back into our personal history? It seems like a mix of fleeting impressions and really profound memories.
It's definitely a mix. Dreams can select their material from any part of the dreamer's life, provided, and this is key, there's a train of thought linking the experience of the dream day, what Freud called the recent impressions, with the earlier ones.
So there has to be a connection.
Yes. However, there's a strong preference for recent impressions. These are often the everyday, seemingly inconsequential events that occur just before sleep, the little bits of mental flotsam and jetsam that just linger.
And these recent impressions aren't always significant in themselves. Often it's the most trivial things from our day that pop up in dreams, right? Like a fleeting image or a random word someone said.
That's exactly right. Often they are quite trivial, even indifferent. For example, Freud's own botanical monograph dream. It was initially triggered by a recent, pretty indifferent experience, seeing a cyclamen monograph in a shop window.
Okay.
But through analysis, it connected back to a deeply significant childhood memory. Him and his eldest sister blissfully destroying a book with colored plates, leaf by leaf.
Oh, wow.
This childhood act then linked, in his associations, to his later passion for collecting and owning books, effectively becoming a bookworm. The childhood scene, long forgotten consciously, acted as a kind of screen memory for these later propensities. It demonstrates how trivial recent events can serve as a point of attachment for much deeper, more significant, and often repressed material.
This idea that childhood memories, even forgotten ones, play such a central role seems crucial to understanding the true depth of dream material. It means our earliest experiences are constantly shaping our present, even in sleep.
It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Because many of these impressions which date back to earliest childhood seem not to be accessible to waking memory. Analysis, however, often reveals them.
Right.
For instance, a respected colleague of Freud's dreamt he was giving Nansen, the famous Arctic explorer, galvanic treatment for an attack of sciatica while they were out on an ice field.
Bizarre, right?
Completely bizarre. The dream only made sense when the colleague recalled a childhood confusion of the German word Reisen, meaning voyages or journeys, with Reisen, meaning gripes or pains, when he used to talk about explorers as a kid.
So, a simple linguistic mix-up from childhood.
Exactly. This simple, unconscious wordplay from childhood was the key to understanding a complex adult dream that seemed completely nonsensical on the surface.
That's incredible. And the actual wish which instigated the dream can often be derived from childhood too, you're saying?
Indeed. Analysis often reveals the child and the child's impulses still living on in the dream. If we go back to Freud's own professorship dream, the one where his friend R was his uncle, the analysis revealed this deep-seated ambitiousness,
Yes.
which stemmed from a childhood prophecy, apparently from his mother, that she had brought a great man into the world. This powerful wish for grandeur, reinforced by childhood aspirations during a particular political era, drove the dream's complex justification for his delayed academic advancement. It even led him to implicitly treat his Jewish colleagues, who had also been denied professorships, as simpletons or criminals in the dream, essentially to differentiate his own fate from theirs and thus, symbolically, step into the minister's shoes. It just shows the profound, enduring influence of early life experiences on our unconscious desires and how they manifest in dreams.
It really does. This shows how those early experiences keep shaping our unconscious desires in profound ways. What about recurrent dreams, though, or those typical dreams so many people seem to experience, like being naked in public or facing an exam? They feel almost universal.
Yes, those typical dreams. Recurring dreams often have deep roots in childhood. Freud discusses typical dreams like being naked in front of strangers, a very common one.
Definitely.
He links this to what he called the unashamed period of childhood, a time which seems to us a paradise before societal inhibitions take hold. The dream of nakedness is no more than a group fantasy of the childhood of the individual, a memory of a time when, symbolically, mankind were naked in paradise and were without shame. The core of a dream of exhibiting reflects the dreamer's current appearance, maybe with inadequate clothing, and the presence of indifferent onlookers, which is actually a wish fulfillment, in a strange way, to retain that childhood lack of shame in the face of adult self-consciousness. It's a nostalgic, often uncomfortable, return to an uninhibited state.
So these aren't just random, isolated experiences. They're deeply rooted in our developmental history. What about more uncomfortable childhood feelings, like hostility towards siblings that might emerge in dreams? That seems like something the censor would definitely want to disguise.
You're right, not random at all. And yes, hostile feelings towards siblings, for example, are far more frequent in childhood than the unseeing eye of the adult observer can perceive. Freud claims to have found the dream of the death of a brother or sister in none of my women patients except one. And that exception, he argues, confirmed the rule when her analysis revealed a confusional state where her unconscious hostility to her mother found a powerful motor expression. The dream work found a way to express this repressed hostility, even if disguised or displaced onto a sibling. A safer target, perhaps.
And the famous Oedipus complex comes into play here, doesn't it? A concept that continues to spark a lot of debate and interest even today. How did Freud connect that to typical dreams?
Yes, the Oedipus complex. Freud found unmistakable indication in Sophocles' tragedy that the Oedipus legend itself sprang from some primeval dream material. Material which had as its content the distressing disturbance of a child's relation to his parents owing to the first stirrings of sexuality. He famously quotes Jocasta's line, Oedipus's mother, saying something like, "Many a man ere now in dreams hath lain with her who bare him." Freud links this directly to the reaction of the imagination to these two typical dreams, the mother-son and father-daughter sexualized fantasies. He views the Oedipus story as a cultural reflection of these universal, albeit often repressed and later abhorred, childhood impulses.
Right.
He notes this is one of the findings that provoked such embittered denials, precisely because it touches upon such deeply unsettling, ingrained childhood desires that society deems unacceptable.
What about more common anxiety dreams like flying or falling? So many people experience these, often with intense physical sensations. Why are they so prevalent? What did Freud think?
Flying and falling dreams, often accompanied by anxiety, are also traced back by Freud to impressions of childhood, specifically related to games involving movement.
Like being tossed in the air.
Exactly. Think of an uncle rushing across the room with him in his outstretched arms to simulate flying, or playing at letting him fall by riding him on his knee. These were initially pleasurable, exhilarating experiences for the child.
Sure.
The anxiety, Freud suggests, develops later, often when pleasurable feelings attached to these experiences are transformed into anxiety due to subsequent developmental changes, maybe emerging sexual feelings or just a reinterpretation of these intense bodily sensations. The childhood joy becomes adult fear.
And examination dreams. Those seem to plague so many people even long after their academic careers are over. It's such a persistent, almost universal anxiety dream.
Yes. These are also typical dreams, often pursued with anxiety dreams of having failed or being obliged to take the examination again. We've all had those, right?
Oh, definitely waking up in a cold sweat.
Freud attributes their ineradicable memories to punishments that we suffered for our evil deeds in childhood, attaching themselves to the two crucial points in our studies, the dies irae, dies illa of our stiffest examinations, the day of wrath, the day of judgment.
Wow.
Neurotic examination anxiety, he says, is an intensification of these same childhood fears. The dream brings back that primal fear of judgment, exposure, and failure from an authority figure. It's a deeply ingrained childhood experience resurfacing.
Okay, so we've covered psychological sources, recent events, childhood memories, but beyond the psychological origins, what role do physical sensations play in dreams? Our bodies are constantly sending signals even when we sleep. Do these stimuli just appear directly in the dream?
Somatic stimuli are indeed significant sources of dream material. Freud categorized them into three types. First, objective sensory stimuli, that's external stuff, like the bomb that woke Napoleon or a falling bedtop hitting Mary.
Real-world intrusions.
Second, internal states of excitation of the sense organs. That's subjective stuff, like the patterns you see with your eyes closed. Idioretinal light, which probably contributes a lot to the visual aspect of dreams. And third, somatic stimuli derived from the interior of the body. Things like hunger, thirst, the need to urinate, even dental pain. These internal bodily states can directly influence dream content.
But these aren't just directly represented, are they? Like, you don't just see a tooth floating in your dream if you have a toothache, do you? Usually it's more symbolic.
No, exactly. That's the key. The stimulus does not appear in the dream in its real shape, but is replaced by another image in some way related to it. For instance, a dental stimulus, the toothache, might lead to a dream of pulling out a tooth. This could symbolize the removal of pain, or maybe even unconscious desires related to loss or castration, depending on context. An intestinal stimulus might translate into dreaming of muddy streets. A urinary stimulus might become a foaming stream.
So the dream imagination represents the organic source symbolically.
Yes, or its function. It transforms the raw physical sensation into a narrative image that also serves the underlying wish fulfillment. It's the mind working cleverly to make sense of the sensation in a disguised narrative form.
Okay, so how does the mind actually take all this raw material, the childhood memories, recent impressions, even these bodily sensations, and weave it into a dream? What are the actual psychological mechanisms at play? The dream work, as Freud called it. What creates such a strange, often nonsensical narrative?
Right, the dream work. Freud identifies two primary governing factors here: dream displacement and dream condensation. Think of these as the ingenious architects of the dream's unique structure. They transform the raw, often chaotic, latent thoughts, the hidden meaning, into the manifest dream content we actually remember.
Okay, condensation and displacement. Let's start with condensation. What does that mean?
Condensation means that several dream thoughts are combined into a single unity in the dream content. Imagine it like a highly efficient symbolic shorthand. A single dream element can represent a multitude of underlying ideas, impressions, or associations.
Like packing multiple meanings into one image?
Exactly. For example, the botanical monograph in Freud's dream wasn't just about a flower book. It was an intermediate common entity connecting two distinct daily experiences and that profound childhood memory of destroying the book.
Right.
Another striking example he gives is the seemingly nonsensical German word Autodidasker that appeared in one of his dreams. Upon analysis, it turned out to be a clever condensation.
Okay.
It combined parts of his anxieties about being an author and an autodidact, someone self-taught, and maybe even linked to names like Lasker or LaSalle. It connected directly to his professional insecurities and ambition regarding his own intellectual lineage. It's like his mind was making a complex mental pun to express several ideas at once.
That's fascinating. Mental shorthand, almost like a zip file of meaning. And what about displacement? How does that work to disguise meaning within the dream? You said it's like misdirection.
Yes. Displacement is when the psychical intensities, meaning the importance or the emotional charge, are transferred from a truly significant dream thought onto an indifferent or less important element in the manifest dream.
So the feeling gets moved.
Precisely. This is a crucial mechanism of censorship. It serves to conceal the true, often repressed, meaning of the dream. For example, an intensely emotional thought might appear in the dream attached to some trivial detail, while the original significant element appears bland or uncharged. The dream work essentially shifts the focus and the emotional weight away from the emotionally charged core. This makes the dream seem less threatening or more benign on the surface, allowing it to pass that internal censor we talked about.
Okay, and Freud said, dreams think essentially in images, not abstract concepts. How does this translate into the strange, often illogical logic of dreams we experience? It really does feel like the mind is creating a visual puzzle, a rebus sometimes.
Precisely. It means that the apparent incoherence or madness of dreams is often only superficial. As one writer, Hervé de Saint-Denis, whom Freud admired, put it, dream images are copies of ideas. The essential thing is the idea. The vision is a mere accessory.
So the visuals are secondary to the underlying thought.
Yes. The dream work simply transforms abstract thoughts into concrete pictorial representations. So the jumbled nature is often just the result of this visual translation process. It often disregards standard logical relations like no, for instance. Dreams find it hard to say no. Instead, It prefers to combine contraries into a unity or for representing them as one and the same thing.
Combining opposites.
Yes. For example, a dream can represent an element by its wishful contrary, meaning something appearing good on the surface could actually represent something bad in the latent thoughts, and vice versa. It's a deceptive trick of the mind to bypass the censor.
And the idea of just the reverse, that's a fascinating inversion you mentioned.
This is a subtle but common mechanism. In one case, Freud analyzed an up and down dream. The act of climbing in the dream was the reverse of what it represented in the dream thoughts difficult in the dream versus easy in the original scene it was referencing from Dada's Sappho. The dream work can even make things unclear or indefinite in the dream to represent an underlying lack of clarity or doubt in the original thought. Like in the dream about the servant girl's paternity, doubt, the vagueness in the dream, mirrored the uncertainty in the latent content.
What about those moments in dreams where you feel inhibited? Like you can't move or shout, often accompanied by a sense of urgency or anxiety. They're often incredibly frustrating.
Yes, that feeling of paralysis, that sensation of inhibition linked with anxiety in a dream, Freud concluded, must be a question of an act of volition, which was at one time capable of generating libido. That is, it must be a question of a sexual impulse.
So repressed desire manifesting as being stuck.
Essentially, yes. It's the repression of a powerful wish, often sexual, manifesting as a physical block. And when a dream includes the thought, this is only a dream, that moment of sudden recognition within the dream itself.
Yeah, lucidity almost.
It's often an attempt by the dream work to detract from the importance of what is being dreamt, or even to signal a wish that the content of the dream within a dream had never happened. It's another psychological defense mechanism, a way for the conscious mind, or perhaps the preconscious, to distance itself from disturbing unconscious material.
Okay, this is where it gets particularly captivating for many people. The idea that dreams speak in a universal symbolic language, almost a secret code shared across humanity, one that can potentially be deciphered.
Indeed. And while Freud initially relied primarily on free association, letting the dreamer's own connections lead the way,
Right.
he later acknowledged the extent and importance of symbolism in dreams. He noted that this symbolism is not peculiar to dreams, but is characteristic of unconscious ideation. It appears also in myths, folklore, neurotic symptoms, even everyday language like figures of speech.
So it's a deeper language of the mind.
Exactly. It offers a second and auxiliary method of interpretation, particularly useful when free associations alone don't seem to fully unlock the dream's meaning. It hints at these shared, maybe archetypal themes.
Can you give us some vivid examples of these fixed, or at least typical universal symbols? It's like building a universal dictionary for our inner world.
Certainly. Freud offers many, though always with the caveat that context matters. For men, a hat, an overcoat, or a necktie can often symbolize the penis chosen according to taste or style, he notes wryly, unlike the real thing, which is fixed. Complicated machinery and apparatus, weapons and tools like plows, hammers, rifles, revolvers, daggers, sabers are also typically male genital symbols. Conversely, castration symbolically can be represented by things like baldness, hair cutting, falling out of teeth, and decapitation.
And for women?
For women, houses with their various entrances and rooms often symbolize the body. Pears, or apple trees, especially in the context of breasts, he references a quote from Faust, or even a table without projections, he suggests, can symbolize virginity.
And what about water dreams? They're so common and often feel incredibly significant, birth-like or womb-like.
Exactly. Water dreams are often, in symbolic language, birth dreams. Diving into the water is frequently interpreted as entering the water in reverse, representing the act of birth.
The opposite action.
Yes. Freud gives an example of a woman dreaming of a small boy wading into water until only his head bobs, then taking him out and washing him. This is a clear birth fantasy, he argues, perhaps reflecting the sensation of quickening during pregnancy. The dream work often takes the reverse of the actual event emerging from water at birth to symbolize entering it, again, likely due to censorship.
This means dreams can sometimes be interpreted almost like a rebus, with a kind of universal code. It's truly fascinating how the mind communicates with itself, sometimes even through puns you mentioned.
To some extent, yes, like a rebus, though the individual context, the dreamer's associations are always vital. For instance, a broken limb in an aim was interpreted as a broken marriage. A clever pun in German, where Knochenbruch, broken bone, sounds similar to Ehebruch, adultery or broken marriage.
Ah, the linguistic connection.
Yes. And the child's dream of God wore a paper-cocked hat that was used to prevent him from seeing others' plates was interpreted as a wish that he knew everything, even in spite of the hat. These aren't just fixed symbols, but show the clever wordplay and visual metaphors the dream work employs, drawing on linguistic similarities and visual illusions. It's almost like a secret language only the dreamer, through association, can truly unlock.
Okay, what about emotions? Emotions in dreams can be so powerful, so vivid, but sometimes they seem completely out of place, or even the exact opposite of what the dream content suggests. How does the dream work handle affects these emotional states?
That's another really striking thing about dreams, the way they handle effects or emotions. Often there's a detachment. An affect can be detached from its connections in the dream thoughts and introduce it at any other point it chooses in the manifest dream.
So the feeling is sort of free-floating.
It can be. For example, in a dream involving a worship in Venice, a scene that brought most cheerful recollections in reality was experienced with intense fright in the dream. The dream work transformed cheerfulness into fear, fulfilling a portion of the latent dream content that was genuinely distressing, but it displaced the emotion onto a seemingly unrelated, even pleasant scene.
So the effect itself is often displaced or even inverted. It's like the dream is playing a trick with our feelings, almost lying about how it truly feels underneath.
You could say that. While an affect felt in the dream is always found somewhere in the dream thoughts, the reverse is not true. Dreams are generally poorer in effect than the underlying thoughts, as if the intensity of feeling is suppressed or dampened down by the censorship. And the dream work can even turn them into their opposite, leading to what Freud called hypocritical dreams. Peter Rosiger's dream of endlessly toiling in a tailor's workshop, a tedious and unpleasant experience on the surface, was analyzed as a hypocritical dream.
Oh, so?
It was disguised as its opposite. It actually revealed a deep longing for the care of his master, a wish for dependency disguised as burdensome work. This paradoxical reversal serves to hide strong repressed wishes that would not be permissible to express directly to the conscious mind.
So even unpleasant emotions in dreams serve a purpose. They're not just random emotional eruptions or noise, they're signals, part of the disguise.
Indeed. Distressing moods during sleep can become the motive force of a dream by arousing energetic wishes which the dream is supposed to fulfill. The dream work then reshapes the material until it can express that wish, even if heavily disguised. The unpleasantness often signals the intensity of the repressed wish that is being distorted by censorship, trying to break through.
This whole deep dive has shown us that dreams are just far from random. They're incredibly intricate, disguised messages from ourselves to ourselves. What does all this tell us about the overall structure of our minds? It sounds like Freud was mapping out a whole new mental landscape with this work.
He truly was. Freud's theory, largely derived from dream analysis, introduces this schematic picture of the mind, consisting of distinct systems: the unconscious, the UTs, which holds our repressed thoughts, primal desires, infantile wishes. Then the preconscious, PCs, which is like a mental waiting room for ideas that are not currently conscious but can become so relatively easily. And finally, consciousness, Cs, our immediate awareness.
And the preconscious acts as a filter.
Exactly. The preconscious acts like a screen or censorship between the raw unconscious and consciousness. It filters what can become conscious, preventing unacceptable thoughts or wishes from direct emergence. This tripartite model, eukisis and psychios, provides a framework for understanding the dynamic interplay of mental forces that shape our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, both waking and sleeping.
And where does consciousness itself fit into this, if so much is happening outside of it? It almost seems like a minor player in this vast mental drama Freud describes.
Well, consciousness in this model functions primarily as a sense organ for the perception of psychical qualities. Like our perceptual systems for the external world, our eyes for light, ears for sound. It registers excitations but doesn't itself retain memories. That happens elsewhere.
Okay.
Its role is to perceive new qualities, like pleasure or unpleasure, and to direct attention, influencing the flow of psychic energy. But this means that the most complicated achievements of thought are possible without the assistance of consciousness.
We can think unconsciously.
Profoundly so. A fact which Freud observed directly from his psychoanalysis of patients suffering from hysteria or obsessional ideas, where repressed thoughts and impulses operate powerfully outside of conscious awareness, yet still drive behavior and symptoms.
This implies that dream thoughts themselves, the raw material before the dream work gets hold of them, are entirely rational and are constructed with all the psychical energy of which we are capable, even if they emerge looking distorted and irrational. So the chaos of the dream is a product of transformation, not original chaotic thought.
Precisely. The dream thoughts are fundamentally logical and well-formed, operating according to unconscious logic, of course. The dream work then transforms these thoughts, often through that process we mentioned called regression.
Regression, right.
Where the fabric of the dream thoughts is resolved into its raw material, returning to sensory images. It's like the mind, when faced with censorship, is forced to retreat from abstract thought back to more primitive, visual, and sensory representation. This regression is often an effect of a resistance against the thought reaching consciousness directly, forcing it to find a different, more primitive mode of expression to bypass that internal gatekeeper.
So why do dreams often incorporate trivial events from the day before, these days residues, if they're so deeply tied to our unconscious and childhood memories? It seems like such a strange mix of the mundane and the profound.
It does seem strange, but these days residues, recent and often indifferent impressions, serve a crucial function. They provide the necessary point of attachment for a transference of repressed ideas bubbling up from the unconscious.
A hook.
Exactly, a hook. They are least of fear from the censorship imposed by resistance, because they haven't yet formed strong, meaningful associations that would attract the censor's attention. They're neutral ground. So they borrow instinctual force from the repressed wishes, allowing those wishes to find expression by attaching themselves to these harmless recent events. They are the superficial hooks upon which deeper, more problematic material hangs, making the dream seem more innocuous on the surface.
This implies there's just this constant struggle within the mind, doesn't it? A dynamic tension between what wants to emerge from the unconscious and what is being held back by censorship or resistance.
There absolutely is. And it brings us to the concept of resistance, which plays a major role not just in dream formation, but also critically in forgetting dreams.
Ah, why we often can't remember them.
Exactly. Freud argues that forgetting dreams is far more upon resistance than upon the fact that the waking and sleeping states are alien to each other. It's not just that sleep is different from waking. This resistance actively works against the dream's content, becoming or remaining conscious, often because the content is too distressing or unacceptable to the waking self. Our minds protect us, in a way, from what we don't want to consciously confront.
So if we can't remember a dream, or only remember fragments, it might be because our mind wants us to forget it, to keep certain anxieties or desires hidden even from ourselves.
That's the implication. A hostile, i.e. resistant purpose, is at work in the forgetting. Yet through analysis, Freud found it possible to reconstruct all the dream thoughts from just a single remaining fragment, demonstrating the persistence of these unconscious elements despite the conscious effort to forget or repress. This reveals the immense power of the unconscious and the constant dynamic negotiation with censorship that shapes our inner world night after night.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey into the complexities of the human mind, all seen through the lens of dreams. So, what's the final word from Freud on their value? Do dreams really carry truth? Can they tell us about the future, as so many cultures have believed for millennia?
Freud is very clear, almost blunt on one point. The value of dreams for giving us knowledge of the future. There's, of course, no question of that.
Okay, so no fortune-telling.
Definitely not. He directly counters that popular belief, reiterating that dreams are rooted firmly in past experiences and present, often unconscious, desires, not prophecy. They offer a window into our inner world, our psyche, not a crystal ball for external events.
So if not about the future, what truth do they offer? What is their ultimate purpose, according to Freud, after all this intricate work?
They offer a profound truth about our inner lives. Our unconscious wishes, our hidden conflicts, the residue of our childhood, and the underlying dynamics that shape our waking behavior. A dream is fundamentally a wish fulfillment, because, as Freud put it, nothing but a wish can set our mental apparatus at work.
The wish is the engine.
It's the engine. It's a roundabout path to wish fulfillment, which has been made necessary by experience, by censorship, by repression. Dreams, therefore, serve as a disguised expression of our deepest, often repressed desires, providing a unique, albeit distorted, insight into the unconscious forces that truly drive us. They are, in a way, a nightly unveiling of our authentic, albeit hidden, self.
We've explored the intricate architecture of the mind, this hidden language of symbols, and the surprising, often ingenious ways our deepest desires manifest themselves when we sleep. You've really shown us how Freud, through such meticulous analysis of his own dreams and those of his patients, pulled back the curtain on this mysterious dynamic terrain.
And the conversation about dreams, therefore, isn't just about the strange, sometimes beautiful, sometimes unsettling narratives we experience each night. It's really about recognizing the constant dynamic interplay of forces within our own minds. Forces that shape our anxieties, our desires, our choices, and our very perception of reality, even when we're wide awake.
Yeah. This deep dive into the interpretation of dreams definitely leaves us with a lot to ponder. Do dreams really carry a profound, unvarnished truth about who we are, stripped bare of our waking defenses? Or are they, as some still believe, just neurological noise from the unconscious, a jumble of thoughts and sensations with no inherent meaning, just a byproduct of a sleeping brain?
Perhaps the most intriguing question really is not what concrete answers dreams provide, but the deeper questions they provoke within you about your own inner world. They invite you, maybe, on a lifelong journey of self-discovery into that mysterious landscape of the unconscious.
We certainly hope this deep dive has sparked your wonder and introspection, leaving you not with rigid explanations, but with a deeper curiosity to explore the layers of meaning within your own mind, within your own dreams. Until next time, keep dreaming and keep exploring.